After presenting the analogies between the Egyptian and biblical texts and discussing their contribution to the interpretation of the Hebrew proverbs, we can now proceed to estimate the broader significance of the parallelism. We should first address the fundamental issue of the direction of influence. Who inspired whom? Several features suggest that the Hebrew scribe borrowed from the Egyptian material rather than vice versa. The first indicator is the enigmatic quality of the Hebrew text, which was obscure in numerous places before the discovery of the Egyptian source. Secondly, several of the motifs and images in the biblical passage are prominently Egyptian in nature. Here is one example. The Hebrew sage recommends memorizing his advice in the following words:
For it will be pleasant if you keep them in your belly, that they may all be secure on your lips.
As we mentioned in Lecture 2, the idea that wisdom resides in the belly is an Egyptian notion. The natural Hebrew metaphor would have been, keep them in your heart. Indeed, the parallel verse in Amenemope uses the belly metaphor.
Let my words rest in the casket of your belly.
The question of the time and place in which the Israelite borrowing from Egypt occurred is a complicated one. We cannot discuss it here. You will find reading recommendations on the course website. We shall rather close the subject with a brief examination of an issue that has preoccupied us throughout the course. To what extent are there not only affinities but also significant differences between the Hebrew and Egyptian sources? The topics we have addressed throughout the course demonstrate essential disparities that shed light on the distinctiveness of Israelite religious ideas. Does the same apply to the current case? An in-depth look at the material reveals several differences. Here are two prominent examples. In the Hebrew proverb about fleeting wealth, the sage compares possessions with an eagle.
Do not strain to get rich. Leave off your staring. If you but let your eyes settle on it, it is no more, for it will surely make itself wings like an eagle's and fly off to the sky.
The parallel Egyptian proverb likens property to a different winged creature.
Do not cast your heart after wealth. Do not throw your heart outward. Do not strain to seek superfluities. Should their place be seen, they are there no longer. They have made themselves wings like a goose and have flown to the sky.
The Hebrew author replaced the goose with an eagle. The reason for this seems to relate to his geographical and zoological environment. While the goose is a water bird characteristic of the Nile and the Egyptian landscape, the eagle is common in the land of Israel and was thus more familiar to the Israelite reader. Another slight difference occurs in the realm of social customs. Both the Hebrew and Egyptian collections include a warning against moving boundary stones.
Do not encroach on the ancient boundary which your ancestors made. Do not encroach on the ancient boundary, nor enter the fields of orphans, for their Redeemer is strong. He will contend against you on their behalf. Do not displace the marker on the boundaries of the fields. Beware of encroaching on the boundaries of the fields. Do not traverse another's furrow. The encroacher will be caught by the powers of the moon.
Both admonitions supply a similar rationale. The trespasser will be punished by a divine power. Yet the choice of words is telling. The Hebrew verse says, "For their Redeemer is strong. He will contend against you on their behalf." This reflects a distinctively biblical notion. The Bible, especially the book of Leviticus, has a distinctive perspective on the ownership of real estate. According to the biblical ethos, one's estate belongs to one for one's whole lifetime. If a man is forced to sell his land, his relatives must redeem it on his behalf and then restore it to him. The rationale given in Proverbs points to God as the mighty redeemer of the oppressed orphans. God will personally plead the orphans' case and ensure that their property is restored to them. Here, we see how a specific biblical concept has been introduced into the more general advice given in the Egyptian original. Other divergences occur here and there in the Hebrew collection. For instance, the Hebrew editor substitutes God for the names of Egyptian deities. This anonymous editor seems to have attempted to make small changes in order to make the text fit Israelite culture. Yet, the big majority of the material was left untouched. The biblical scribes generally take a favorable attitude towards their Egyptian source. Unlike other cases we have observed in this course, the biblical editor here is not critical of the ideas and content of the culture from which he borrowed. He does not attempt to correct or censure them with a heavy hand. Rather, he appears to have viewed borrowing from other wisdom traditions as a natural and acceptable convention. The only required changes in his view were small adaptations to make the material suit the Israelite environment. This attitude is in line with the universal and cosmopolitan nature of Israelite wisdom literature. It seems appropriate to close our course on this note. Throughout the course, we have observed the various types and ways in which external material has been assimilated into the biblical world. These different methods of dealing with other cultures and beliefs gave rise to biblical thought as we know it today.